Yeah, so from my understanding of the fall, Satan was not bound. So I don't know how he'd be a disembodied spirit. If I'm not mistaken though, that the Watchers, these demons aren't the angels disembodied, it's their sons, the Nephilim.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And
So
so hold on. Well, let's put a pause really quick before we continue on. We'll introduce. So everybody, welcome to the Word on Tap. Russ and I are just in the middle of starting our show. Thought we'd get it going. These are good topics. Today we're going to do a little thing, thoughts from Shabbat. We were in the book of Jubilees, and we went over a few chapters. We're just going to highlight a few things and talk about it really quick. And right now we're on the topic of Satan, Mastema. And is he bound? I guess is the question. But before we get there, Russ, do you want to say anything to our wonderful audience who has blessed us with many views and many likes in 1 month? And so we want to acknowledge them.
yeah, no, thanks for watching. And comment if you've got questions or just stuff to add, that's to add to everybody who's a part of it that reads the comments and adds to our thoughts and stuff for us to look up and ponder as well.
For sure, man. So the question you started when we were recording is Satan a disembodied spirit, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we're introduced to Mastema, right? And it's like this is the first time that this is brought up. It's a new character name, Mastema, right? And then it's in chapter 10, verse 7. So his name means hatred or hostility. So he is the prince of hatred, and so and Satan is adversary. So these are titles. So yeah, the question that I had is this the spirit of Azazel that it is Satan the disembodied spirit of Azazel is what was the question.
My response is I didn't think the Watchers were disembodied spirits. I thought the Nephilims were the disembodied spirits. The Watchers are fallen angels, and some of them got bound. We know the ones that slept with women got bound, correct?
Yep.
And Satan appears not to get that treatment, correct?
Right.
Which is one of the examples I use of that there was no sex in the garden. He got a complete different judgment.
Right.
But anyhow, yeah, we get to this passage and he's called Mastema. Now we know it's Satan because verse 11 tells us it's Satan. It says, and when he did according to all his words, all the malignant or evil spirits, the evil ones were bound in the place to condemnation. And the 10th part of them was left that they might be subject before Satan. So at least we know who they're subject to and who they are. So demons are disembodied spirits from the Nephilim. They are the sons of the Watchers, and they are under Satan's control. That's pretty well. And then we know if they're under his control, and Yahushua tells us they come to steal, kill, and destroy, then we know what their game is. And actually, you're going to see them function in here. So we see right away that in verse 1 that these unclean, and notice too that these unclean spirits, if you go back to chapter 8, it says, and in the 3rd week of this Jubilee, it seems like we're still in the Jubilee that started in chapter 8. Chapter 9 is kind of like it breaks the nations up, divides the land, should I say, not the nations, it divides the land. And then we get right back into 10. It appears 2 weeks later after the one son goes and gets the Watchers, the writings, the teachings of the Watchers and interprets them, demons are on the scene. And I find it fascinating because how much of their doctrine is flowing around now. And, how often do we invite them? Or can we invite them? These are just great questions, great observations, because we're getting insight that the 66 don't give us. But it does answer a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so it says that they're for leading astray. Let's just take this simplistic part in verse 2, because Noah starts to pray, and he told them concerning the demons, they are for leading astray and blinding and slaying his sons, his grandchildren. And we both agreed that the blinding is more spiritual, right? He's not going around throwing blinders. People are running into walls. But what do we see in most?
Yeah, I was saying, I mean, this is what he does. And
Mhm.
that he pleads for a tenth of them to remain. And um, he gets that. So, but not nine. It says not nine parts go down into the place of judgment, and a tenth remains. So, it's a fascinating thing to read. Enoch, especially like chapters 10 and 69, and read those with Jubilees chapter 10 to really get a full picture of what's going on at this point.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And like I was saying earlier before recording, it feels like Jubilees fills in a lot of Genesis and Enoch fills in a lot of Jubilees. Jubilees and Enoch are very hand in hand.
mhm.
And I'm learning they support Genesis very well too. Um, what I like too is the author too of Jubilees is consistent with like how scripture works. She should be. Um, is it tells us in verse 8, it says that for these are for corruption and leading astray before my judgment. Okay. So we know what the demons do. And then right after this, we get the Tower of Babel, right? And then the leading man astray. So you're actually seeing their work now here on earth. These things are unleashed through writings. And if you read Enoch, there's an angel who curses mankind by teaching them writing.
Mhm.
And then now we have these writings. The son gets the teachings, and now we see mankind cursed. It's
Mhm.
it's all consistent when you let it unfold itself. Take
Mhm.
your preconceived thoughts away. Now look at what we have. Once these demons are on earth, we now come to the Tower of Babel,
Mhm.
and it seems like these demons are about to start to have their way in a big. Um, but before we kind of continue to move on, because we're going to actually see these demons mess with Abraham as well. What I like is you see the priestly duties of Noah, and I'm going to point these out because these are tangibles that we can actually still apply to this day. Like this is things that we can take from the Book of Jubilees. We can understand the spirits, not see them like Noah did, but we can function like Noah did. And he prays, and his prayer is so biblical. It's so simplistic. He reminds the Father of who he is. He reminds the Father of who his promises. Which anytime you sit still before the Father and you do such a thing, I'm telling you, it changes your soul. It really does. It brings a peace upon you. And I encourage everyone to participate in those works. Praying, these priestly duties, they're there for us. Um, Fascinating though, brother, how it says Satan gets a 10% of these. Now, Mark 5, is it where those demons tell Jesus, what does he say? Are you going to throw us into the abyss? Our time has not yet come. And
Mhm.
they plead
Yeah.
with, this is what they're speaking of, people. So when you read the Gospels and you're like, what are those demons speaking of? The ones that Yahusha throws them into the pigs? This
Uh-huh.
right here. They were spared. They knew it. And just like Noah reminds the Father of his promises, these demons remind Yahusha of the timeline. Like, hey, it's not time yet. And he throws them in. So it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Uh, and anything you want to add to that?
No, I was just pulling it up here, and it's just that they didn't, who he throws them into swine, the demons, and then they run into the sea. Um, but yeah, it's such a good correlation, and you see when you have this background to it, and then you can see that that they're saying, well, no, it's not time. It's not our time, and you're like, okay, well, this is why. Um, so anyway.
You know what I find fascinating about that, though, Russ? It's consistent with the character of the Father. Because even though he has his festivals for us, the appointed times, he has his appointed time for their judgment.
Right. Yep. And they know what that
Yep.
is too. So
Another thing I find fascinating, and I just encourage this. It's verse 13. There's obviously a book of medicine. It's written down, but this book of medicine, it talks about herbs, and it can preclude evil spirits from hurting us. Now, there's a lot there. I definitely buy into. There's a correlation from the depravity, the lawlessness, the blinding that is on earth as we know it, and the artificial foods we eat. you know, because there seems to be a book of healing and it's all around herbs. And so if these herbs, these natural God-given things can heal us, then we know these pharmaceutical synthetic structures are blinding and killing us. Because if these are the ways of Satan, remember, if you just go back to what is their goal, leading astray and corrupting. And so when you look at the birth of pharmaceutical drugs, which pharmakia is the word sorcery in scripture, it's demonic, and it is leading people away. There's so many of our kids are doped up on pharmaceutical drugs just so they can get through college. So many pastors are on, I know pastors who take Vyvanse, which the side effect is that they lose their social ability, like their social skills. It's like, well, you're a pastor. Wouldn't you rather have social skills than focus? Like, no, I got to be focused so I can teach. It's like, makes no sense to me. But anyhow, and these are real things. Now, if you're listening to this and you're on a prescribed pill, a statin, what I'm not here to condemn that. But God did provide all things we need, and we have to let's start rethinking things, not throwing all the baby out with the bathwater, but just start rethinking things. Be conscientious of what you put in your body, and just there's something there. There's something there, and we are the temples. We are the tabernacle of the Holy Spirit. So.
Yeah, it's he created medicine for us, and what we have now is just a fake form of that that isn't as good as what he created for us. And it'd be nice to have this book, but someone's got it in a basement.
The Vatican, yes,
somewhere.
But I'm listening, buddy. Sorry.
Oh no, that's all I had.
There was a verse in here, and it talks about how he sent these demons into the city. And I did not highlight it, and I'm having a hard time finding it. But when you go right into to chapter 20, chapter 10, verse 22, it says that they were dispersed. Oh, this is where it is. It says, let us go down, confuse their language. Now, this is the destruction of the Tower of Babel. Demons are involved. And it talks about that they may be dispersed into cities and nations, and the one purpose will no longer dwell with them until the day of judgment. And that's something I was tripping out on. So the whole part of the Babel, this Tower of Babel, and this is insight for us because it seems to be their unity, right? Their unity of mission. They were obviously making war with the Father. Genesis teaches us that they wanted to overthrow his kingdom and be like him, and they want to ascend. And then he disperses them, and it says they will no longer abide with them till the day of judgment. And the way I'm reading this is Satan's work got stopped at that time. And since the Tower of Babel, since the confusion has entered in, he's been doing his best to bring about false unity, false peace. And I think that is now his mission. And he does it through corruption, and he does it through, lying and deceiving people. Because what do we see most people do? They compromise and they corrupt their faith to fit in with the world. And we're seeing everyone assimilate into this line, into this thinking for the betterment. And it's all over the church. It's for the betterment of mankind. I will just love my neighbor and not tell them the truth. And boom. And that's bringing that one language that's missing is returning.
Right.
And we're seeing pieces of it. It's definitely through technology.
Yeah. Well, and through really through religion, or the powers of the mainstream religion, this whole just a call to this unity, and it's in order to really do that, you have to, you gotta, who are you unifying with, and what are you, what are you compromising a lot? You'd have to compromise a lot to unify with that, with those systems.
Well, the church is mainly teaching to be a whitewashed version of the world. The church is easy to pick on. It's low-hanging fruit, but these are observations we have to make, okay? the modern worship is it's a G version of secular music. You know, and it's deception, because Yahushua tells us he's not of this world. His kingdom's not of this world. He didn't come to be peace, but a sword, not to be friends with the world. And yet that's the focus of religion, is to compromise truth so you can be loving to your neighbor. And it's a distortion, and go back to these demons and their goal to lead astray. And like I said before, man, leading astray doesn't have to be like, Russ, I'm going to get you to believe in Gnosticism and say this. No, all I got to do is add a little leaven,
right?
And it'll leaven the whole lump. Yahushua teaches us that the kingdom is like a mustard seed, right? And as it grows, all these ravens are Satan. We get that with this analogy we're going to see with Abraham shortly. They go and they make their nest in the kingdom. And you know, the wheat and the tares, they grow amongst us. And at the end, he's going to rip them apart, which is insight too, because they're so deceived. Sometimes we're not even going to know our brother is not our brother. They're going to grow right along with us. And so, it's just good stuff. And I think we have to take more heed to it. It gives light to when Paul says we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but the prince and the powers of the air. And,
one more thing on 10. So we saw that in chapter 9, you know, that Ham, Shem, and Japheth, they were given specific boundaries, right? And they made an oath not to cross over those boundaries. And we see that Canaan is going. He did not go into the land of his inheritance, it says, right? So he went and dwelt in the land of Shem. And so they're basically saying, you know, his father and brothers are pleading with him not to do this, you know, and they said it's not going to go well for you. And so just keep this in the back of your mind as you progress through what happens, is that, what happens, who is in the land of Canaan, and that they're not supposed to be there, and they cross the boundaries that they said that they wouldn't do that. So anyway, that's just an interesting little thought to remember as you move forward in Jubilees. And
sure,
so that's a good one. That's it for chapter 10, and we can.
So following this whole demon thing, check this out, man. So in chapter 11, I'm fascinated because this is what's influencing this corruption on earth. Now, we know that man has sin in his heart, and obviously we know that's where wars and all these evil thoughts come from, but we also know that these spirits, they play with their minds. But look at verse 2. It says, the sons of Noah began to make war on each other. Trip out on that, dude. These spirits deceived them to make war on each other, to slay each other, and to shed blood, the blood of man on the earth, and to eat blood. This is the deception, how strong the deception has already made its way through Noah's children. But look at this, and to build strong cities in walls and towers, and they began to exalt themselves above the nations. This is where ultimately you can continue to read on if you like. And this is, again, you can see them fulfilling that work that's leading astray. And you want to know when you're led astray is when you can look within yourself and think that you are like the Most High. And that's where he's leading all these people, all these strong men, they're being led. And what's important about this, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, Russ, is because it's really going to point out the strength we see in Abraham as we move forward and what he's actually dealing with. So we're dealing with nations that are killing each other, eating each other, and they're considered strong cities and towers already.
We have Prince Massima, right? So he sends the crows and birds so they might eat the seed which was being sown in the earth, in order to spoil the earth, that they might rob mankind of their labors. Right now, that's like that, right? There's a lot on that right now. He actually sends these physical ravens, right, to destroy the land and to eat the seeds. But then, what does Yahushua teach, right? So the sower sows the word, right? And what does Satan do? It says when they hear the word that is sown, Satan immediately comes and takes away the word that was sown in their heart. Right. So he's just, I mean, this is like exactly, Yahusha's like putting the spiritual application of this right here. I just find that fascinating that he's directly teaching a parable from this. I mean, that's how I see it, directly related to this chapter right here. And you see what did Abram do, right? He turns the crows away 70 times, and none of the crows settled on any of the fields where Abram was. And it's just it's a really great example of Satan trying to come in and take the seed. And then you read the parable of the sower and how we need to let that seed, like plant that seed and let it grow, and not let Satan come and steal it or mess with it.
Yeah, and think of the analogy, right? He plowed it 70 times. And when you go through the four soils, like the fruitful soil is the one that was consistently plowing the field. Like the seed fell by the wayside. Okay, I get it. That's misplacing the seed. But when it fell in good soil, there was those that were choked out or those that were consumed by the world. But the good soil wasn't choked out, wasn't consumed by the world. It kept tilling. And each and every, because in all of our walks, we're always tilling, right? We're always prepping and preparing that soil to be more fruitful. Mm-hmm. And I like that analogy because he didn't just stop, man. He plowed his field 70 times. He had wisdom and he knew how to keep the soil strong. I like that.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get into Abraham, because verse 12 tells us a lot about Abraham and why this man was called. And again, a lot of pieces that we could apply to ourselves. Like we could see ourselves in this man. Mm-hmm. And because he lives in a time when there's great wickedness on the earth. We already got that. We see that people are eating each other at this point. And his father's an idol worshiper. Now, this is a great chapter if you want to read it, but it's something to see the subtlety of these demons. But also, look what it says. Abraham starts to talk to his father, and he tells him that in the latter portion of verse 5 that these idols, his father's an idol maker, and he sells idols to the people. And Abraham's telling him that these are great shame, and they're misleading the hearts of those who worship them. So Abraham is already bitten with truth, and he's standing up for righteousness. And he says, worship them not. But look what his father says, because this is the more common heart. His father said to him, I also know this, my son. He's confessing he knows the truth. Mm-hmm. But what shall I do with the people who have made me to serve before them? If I tell them the truth, they will kill me. For their soul cleaves to them with worship, and they honor them. And he tells his son to keep silent, lest they kill Abraham. So Abraham's in a very hostile context, and you can see why the man is being called to be the father of nations. This man stands up. Mm-hmm. And what's funny, Russ, like if you kind of go through, there's always pillars, right? I never put this together. I always felt Enoch was the first man to be elevated, but it appears Abel is the first man to be elevated. Mm-hmm. Yahusha calls him a prophet. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I have my opinions on Cain and Abel, the whole story, but he's called a prophet. And I'm fascinated that he obviously stood up for something. He was killed by his brother, so he was standing up for something righteous. We know Enoch stood up for something righteous. We know Noah stood up for righteousness. We see Lot attempted to stand up for righteousness. Mm-hmm. And here we have Abraham standing up for righteousness. And when you take these pillars of our faith, and you can negotiate with Lot. He may not be a pillar, but he is called the righteous man by Peter. They always stood up. Yeah. And there appears to be no compromise in their soul, and they seem to be rewarded. Right. And I really believe when we stand up for Yah's word and his truth, even today, there's rewards for us. These men didn't see the reward. I guess Enoch did, but these men were faithful. And the Bible tells us that Abraham died without even seeing the promise. Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the courage that they show, right? I mean, they are standing, they're standing up for righteousness when in the face of death, and he's not willing to waver at all. So it's just a really good really good application. How we can apply that in our lives is there. He's really he's showing why he was chosen, why he was pulled out of, called out. So and then you go down to verse 12 in chapter 12, and what does Abram do? He burns down the house of idols, right? Like he, at this point, he got married, and he's like, I've had it. I am burning this place down. And it's just amazing. He burns it down. His brother ends up dying. And because his brother goes into, to try and save the idols. And, like we talked about yesterday about how that kind of gives a little bit of a little more background to the story of Lot, and why Abraham feels, or, why he's, I guess, feels, responsible for him, or, he offers him, tells him, pick whichever land you want, he's taking care of his nephew, because his father was killed in the fire that he started. So, you just think he probably had some bad feelings about that, but it's amazing that he's an outlaw, he's like, I'm burning this place down. I've had it. It's great.
He's an outlaw, but he does what's right.
Right. Yeah.
He takes care of his boy. He takes care of the young man that he knows. Guy was a fool, ran in, and he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But Abraham did what was right.
But that's a good point too. When what does his brother do? He fights the wrong battle, right? He runs to the wrong battle, and like spiritually, like he's running to the wrong, to defend the wrong thing, and pays a price for it. So what battles do we have that we go to the wrong one? We got the third temple coming. We're gonna head over there, and there's a whole lot of stuff to learn here.
Yes, there is. Yeah. And we can get into one of those things since you mentioned that. We noticed something really cool in verse 16. And I like this because the festivals in Yah's appointed times are his. They don't belong to an ethnic group, or they don't belong to a nation. They are his, and they belong to his people. Mm-hmm. And you see that in verse 16, while we have this uncircumcised Gentile from the land of Ur in Chaldea, what is he doing, my friend? In verse 16.
Oh, he's keeping the Feast of Trumpets. So it says it's the first day of the 7th month. So yeah, this really opens that up. Opens up his calendar. These things are happening on specific days. As you're reading through Jubilees, note these things. The first of the first month. The first of the 4th month. These things are days of remembrance. These are feast days, and Jubilees really lines out when these things happen, because it's important. His timing and his feasts and his calendar is important to him, so it should be important to us.
No, check it out. His prayer though in verse 20. But before you read that, back to 10, verse 8, it tells us that these spirits are for corrupting and leading astray the sons of men. Right. Mm-hmm. Look what it says right here. He's now praying, deliver me from the hands of the evil spirits who have sway over the thoughts of men's hearts and have led them astray from thee. It's already happened. Mm-hmm. It is already, and he's acknowledging that, and that these demons are out and they're doing their thing. And what I like about Abraham and what I like about Noah is they are men of prayer, dude. Like, we have these couple chapters and they are constantly in prayer for their families. Mm-hmm. And I think as a priest, this is we can emulate that, and we too can be constantly in prayer. And just know this: these demons and their doctrine are still out there, and they're still leading astray. And they're not necessarily after you and I, Russ. They're after Ryan, Brooklyn, Jaden. They're after the youngsters,
right?
And that rust, that leaven may not affect our walk much, but it may completely destroy theirs. And if you ever look at the festivals in Leviticus, it says it's for our generations. They are for our children. And he's attempting to lead them astray. And they could be led astray by you thinking they belong to an ethnic group. And I don't want anyone to think that nonsense, because blessed is the God and Father of our creation, right? He was blessed us with every spiritual blessing, Paul tells us in Ephesians. And he tells us that we've been brought near to those promises and covenants, and let no Pharisee in their theology rob you of it. So, because those demons, they're at work and they're seeking to devour you and take these blessings from you. And so these are just some things that stood out to me, brother. I thought this week was great in Book of Jubilees. Anything else? I do know that we see the Feast of First Fruits. I don't know if you wanted to point that out as well.
Yeah. Two other things in chapter 13 that are just there's a lot there, but just the calendar related. In verse 8, it's the head of the year. It's the first of the first month, and he offers up a burnt offering. This is Abraham. So again, specific days that are given in Jubilees that these things are happening on. And then the first fruits at the end of chapter 13 in verse 25 and 26, where it talks about the first fruits, and it says of the grain, which is the barley and the wheat, and then wine and oil. And so we follow each of those as there's multiple first fruits. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Well,
that's all I got for those.
I'll close, and we'll keep it consistent with what we do about this whole spiritual thing, because again, if you're hearing scripture, we got to be accountable to these things. And we notice in verses 4 with chapter 13, 4, 9, 15, and 16, I wrote down as Abraham functioning in priestly duties. Again, these are priestly functions that you and I, that we can all function in. In verse 4, it says he built an altar there before, and he offered therein. Now, again, we don't need to offer a burnt sacrifice. We already have that sacrifice. But we as priests can come and offer thanksgiving and sit before our Father in humility and offer praises and whatnot. And but and the reason why I'm pointing these out is because from the beginning, the patriarchs knew how to serve Yahuwah. His ways were made known from the beginning to his people. And we see Abraham right here. And I think Abraham was probably taught by, and Melchizedek is definitely a topic I want to have a show on. But Adam and Eve had a sacrifice when they were out of the garden. They were covered. We know Abel is making some kind of sacrifice. Yahusha calls him a prophet, and he's a shepherd. He's doing he's offering sheep. And this structure is known. The Father made his way known. And if anybody else tells you otherwise, that is another gospel. Be wary of it and do not succumb to it, because the scriptures are yours. He's given the Spirit to lead you and guide you. He's given brothers and sisters to surround you and mature you. And everything should always point you to the doctrine of Yahusha. Russ and I have just spent almost an hour going through the book of Jubilees, a lost book, not even canonized with the 66, and yet we're constantly pointing back to the teachings of Yahusha and correlating it to the 66.
Yep.
So
yeah. No, I just want to encourage everybody. If you like this video, subscribe, like it, give it a thumbs up, and leave a comment if you've got a question or just comments. Something to add to it that would be for everybody to look at, or for us to look at. Encourage you to do that. So
absolutely,
everybody.
Good deal. Well, thank you, Russ. Blessings, my friend.
Yeah,
I'll see you soon.
All right, see you.
Bye, buddy. Take care.